Alright, hey guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture, I'm going to cover project templates in FL Studio. So this is actually how I'm starting out my projects every time. So to open up a new template, you just go to File, New from Template, and you can choose the different template that FL Studio comes with. So why do you use templates? And this is basically because you want to use or you want to start your project each and every time the same way, kind of. And what I mean by that is to, let's say that you use some different plugins every time. You don't want to set up all of the different setups for those plugins every time you want to start a project. Because let's say that you are into that kind of creative statement and you just want to create music. So let's say you always want to create chords with a certain like piano plugin, for instance. Then you can have that piano plugin set up. You can have that routed to, let's say, a reverb or an echo, and then you can have limiters and you can have different stuff on the master, for instance. And if you have that set up as a project template, you just open up the project template and you're good to go. You can just start to create your chord progressions and stuff like that without having to open up the piano and create the routings for your reverbs or other things like that. And FL Studio comes with different project templates. So as you can see here, I have the EDM/house template open up, and this is a really nice project template, I think, because it's already organized within the playlist. As you can see, there are different colors for different stuff here. You have the kick, snare, hi-hat, cymbals, and that is inside a drums group, for instance. And now it's just a matter of me to open up the channel rack here. I can import different audio to these tracks here in the channel rack, or I can just create a new one and set that up to the mixer channel. So as you can see here, if I go to the mixer channel, all of the channels here are already set up, so I can just, let's say, create a new instrument here, and I can just group that to whatever mixer channel I want. And let's say that I have a riser, for instance. I can just take a riser from my samples here and just put it on this track, and it's already routed to one mixer channel and it's already named and colored. And then I can just put that clip into the riser here, which is already grouped to the FX group. So I don't have to create groups and I don't have to actually name or color anything here. And you're not doing this because you don't want to rename your tracks or rename your playlist or patterns or anything. It's not that. You want to have your project template because you want to start your project as fast as you can. Because let's say that you have a chord progression in your head and you want to have that chord progression created in your track, and you want to, let's say you want to create a big full song out of it. And then you're creating a new project without anything, and you have to open up a piano roll, you have to open up or choose a plugin for that piano, and in that time you may forgot about your chord progression that you had in your head, or you're just stuck with different technical stuff that can get your creative ideas out of the way, you know. So it's a lot better to have your project template, and you don't need to use the FL Studio's built-in project templates. So let's say that you have all of these templates here, but let's say that you're using some plugins that you like, you know, and they are not in these templates that FL Studio comes with. You can just create a new template or a new FL Studio project file if you want to. Then you can create your routings, you can create your tracks like this, and you can set up different mixer channels as well. Then you can just save this template, or you can save this project as it is without any sounds or anything. You can just have plugins, you can have different names, you can have colors like this one, you can have it organized like that, but without anything in the playlist. If you have it like that, you can just go to File, Save As, and then let's say that I want to create a template. Then you can just go to templates here and you can save it as it is. So let's say my own template here, and I save it in the folder of templates, which should be in the FL Studio folder. So if I create it like that, if I save it here, so if I now restart FL Studio as I done in the background here, I can go to File, New from Template, and this is my own template. And now it will load up with this template that I created, for instance. So I really recommend you to create a brand new project. Okay, so let's create a new one, and we want a new one, so we don't want anything else. And you can do that by go to Minimal here and just an empty. So this is totally empty. It doesn't contain anything. And first of all, I would set the tempo. So use the tempo that you're most familiar with, that you're creating the most tracks with. For instance, I create a lot of progressive house music, and sometimes I create slower tracks, I create faster tracks sometimes, but most often I'm most comfortable with 128 BPM. So I set it up like that. And then I can go to this different playlists and tracks in the playlist. So what I can do here is to rename color and icon. So the first one would be the kick drum. I always color the kick drum in red like that. And then we have different drums. So I would just do drum tracks in orange, and I would create drums 1, drums 2, same color like that, and drums 3. So what I mean by this is, now that I have this set up here, I can just throw in different samples from the browser here. Let's say I want a kick drum, I can just put in a kick drum here, just drop it there. Same thing goes with different drums. So if I would have to have one more drum section, for instance, I can just create that track. But it's nice to have something to start out with. So now I can just throw in different samples without having to worry about, let's say that, where should I put the drums, or I put the drums here and then I put some piano sound here, and it starts to get not organized, you know. But if you put it like this and you have a nice starting point where you can just organize things, it will be a lot easier then to clean up the project and, you know, create a new, fresh, organized project. So I would do the same thing here. Let's say that I want some synth sounds. Let's do it like this in this color. Piano, I always use a piano sound. Like that, maybe a bass here. Let's go with something darker with the bass. What do we have more? Synth, piano, bass, kick, drums, and that is basically what I will start out with, I think, for now. So let's close that. So now I can just throw in my different ideas. So let's say that I have a piano or I have a chord progression that I want to create. I can just create a new chord progression and throw it into this track here and start to create my simple, very simple short arrangement. Then I can create a kick, drums, and everything like that. Then if I create some more tracks, I can just start to create them here as I produce the track, you know, because you don't know what you should use in your project like before you even start the project. So this is just a very simple way to start out with your project and set everything up so you don't have to redo stuff like that. And also what I like to use here is to go to the channel rack and create, this is a sampler, as you can see. I want it to be like that because I can throw in different audio here and try it out. And then I also like the FL keys, which is a piano. So let's like that. So let's have it in like that as well. Then I like to use the 3X oscillators, which is 3 oscillators that I can try out different bass sounds with. I can choose the different shapes here of the oscillators and just create some different cool stuff. So I always have that in as well. So now I have a sampler, I have FL keys, and I have oscillators in here as well. So now it's very easy for me to start out with with a track. So let's say that I want to create the FL keys, and I have a corporations that I want to create. I can just throw in different stuff here. All right, so that is... Yeah, and now I can just create this. So I put it here in the piano, and now I can start to create the arrangement with the kick drum, drums, and other stuff like that. And I also want to set up something or mixer channels in the mixer section here. And I basically do the same thing as I have in the channel rack here and what I have in my playlist. So let's say I have the kick drum here, and I have drums 1, 2, and 3. I always want to set up one track for the kick drum. So let's do the same thing, kick, and put it on red. Then I do one mixer channel for the drums, which will be a bus basically. And a bus is a group of different sounds and different instruments and audio samples. So whatever I have put in here in drums 1, 2, and 3 should go through this bus here, kick and drums. And then I have synth, so let's do the same thing here, synths, I would call it like that. And this is just to group the different synths together. And as you can see with the coloring here, you have the recent used colors here, so you don't have to search for the colors. And so let's do it like that, synths. Then we have bass sounds, okay? So now I have my 4 different sounds that I want to group them together within the mixer channel. And so let's say that I create a piano, I create, let's say, a guitar sound, for instance. All of that I want it to be grouped into the synth, because I want to create a compressor for sounds that are in the mid section of the EQ spectrum, and let's say bass sounds where I want to cut everything that is in the higher frequency spectrum. And yeah, so same thing goes with the drums here and the kick. So what I would do first thing here, so for the kick drum, I will leave it as it is. Drum section, I will go with a compressor. So let's go with a fruity compressor here. And what you can do here is to go to the presets that shows up here. And for a nice drums compression, just go with the drums preset here and leave it as it is, basically. And for the drums, I also want to EQ out the lowest low end, because that is where we want our bass to be. And this is very important when you're creating mixdowns, because otherwise you will have to have an EQ on almost every single channel. So you don't want that. You want different sounds to be grouped to these 4 buses, or if you have more buses, you can create that as well. The buses are basically groups that you're grouping different sounds together with, and then you're treating them as one. So let's go with the parametric EQ here, and I can just lower the lowest end of the EQ here. So I put it like that. Now we have the drums being, as you can see here, just cut it off on the low end. And this is why we have different groups for the kick drum and the drums, because with the kick, basically a kick drum is a drum, right? But with the kick drum, especially in electronic dance music, you have the kick drum with a lot of bass in it. Because if you would cut off the bass from the kick drum, it would not be powerful, and your track would sound like, it would not sound good at all, you know. So you want the bass to be there with the kick drum, and that is why I have the kick drum left out of the drums group. So I have that for the drums group, and then we go to the synths. So in the synths group, I want it to be actually kind of the same thing here. So let's go with a fruity compressor, and you can do a full reset vintage mix, for instance. But what I would like to do here is to go to a third-party plugin, which is all for free. You can find it in the description of this course. So what we can do here is to go to more plugins. And now I can find all of my different plugins on my computer. So I will search for OTT, which is the plugin that I'm referring to from X-For Records. It's for free, so let's just use it like that. And now I put this depth here and to about, let's say 12%, something like that. And what this does is it's a downwards compressor. It's a bit complicated. I don't actually know the exact thing that the OTT does, and I made some research, about it, and there are some different YouTube videos that tries to explain this, but still I don't really exactly know what it does. But it's a multiband compressor and it sounds awesome. So I think it sounds best when it's set around here in the depth, around let's say 1/4 here. And you can use this on almost everything, but you should use it on the buses and not on the individual sounds, because if you do it too much, it will sound too flat and your track will sound kind of boring. But if you do it like this within the groups, and especially on synth sounds or on drum sounds, that will sound amazing. I don't use it for the bass sounds, for instance, because a bass sound is kind of low in the frequency spectrum, so I want the bass sounds to be treated as one, basically. Because if you do it with the OTT, your drum section and your synths will start to sound like it comes a bit alive, So and the bass sounds, you want to have control of the bass sounds more like that. So I would put the OTT as the first plugin here in the synth section, and then I will go with we have a synth section. So let's go with a delay, and I will put the wet signal to 0. So I will have the dial here in the mixer to 0, because now I can automate the delay. So let's say I want a delay for the synths. I can just automate this dial here to put more delay or less delay. Then I want a reverb here, and same thing goes here. I can either go with the wet signal here up and down, or I can just put this dial here, which I would do. So I would go to a 0 here. Then after that, I want to create an EQ, a paramedic EQ. And same thing goes here. I don't want any low end, and I don't want the highest frequencies as well. I would actually do it a bit narrower, because some of the synth sounds will have their the most sounding elements in around up to 16,000 hertz. So I would do it like that, and also put it a bit higher like that as well. So now I have my synth mixer channel or mixer group set it up like that. Then let's go to the bass. And with the bass, I want almost everything to be in mono here. So it's very important to have your bass sounds in mono, because you don't want the bass sounds to start to rumbling around in different stereo settings and stuff like that, because you will get a very, very muddy sounding track, So for bass sounds, create this bass track in mono. I'm going to go to a plugin. So let's go to the Fruity Stereo Shaper, and I'm going to load up a preset here, which is LR to LL. You can see this is basically taking the left signal and the right signal and put it to the left. And this is what mono is. So I'm going to take it like that, and now everything which will go through this bass group will be set in mono. Then I'm going to open up an EQ. So let's put this EQ, the Paramedic EQ2, just to get some better view here. And I'm going to put everything, let's say above 400 Hertz would be basically cut it off. And you can see that in this section here, you can see that the bass section starts around here, around to 300 Hertz. But I'm going to have it set to around 400 Hertz here. And the sub is going to around here, around as you can see, 38 Hertz, somewhere around there. So I'm going to cut it off there as well, just to, we don't want the sub to be too much there, you know. So let's do it like that. So now we basically have everything going through the group of the bass mixer channel here, and it will go through mono. So it will first like getting the signal to be in mono, and then it will take all of that signal and cut off everything besides this section here in the frequency spectrum. And if you do this with all of your different sounds, you can see we use EQ for everything now. So let's say we have a bass section here in the frequency spectrum. Then we have synth section, which will be here, around here. And then we have same thing with the drum section, will be around here. But we're leaving space for the bass in this section and in this section. And here we have our bass sounds. So now if we create a mixdown, it will actually sound clean. But we don't have to use our mixdown because we already have this set up in our template. So now when we create our sounds and our track, you know, and put our different stuff, like say we have a sampler, we can put it to synths immediately and FL keys as well. And we want this plugin to be made for different basses. So we created for, we assign this to our 4th channel, which is our bass group here. So now we have a nice mixdown where we're creating our, so we don't have to worry a lot about the different mixing things you have to do when creating your track, you know, because sometimes it sounds amazing when you're in that creative stage, you know, and you're throwing in a million different sounds and it sounds great. But then when you start to mixing, you feel like your track is getting like boring and very thin because you're starting to get rid of different stuff and you're putting things in mono and different stuff. But if you do it within the creative stage, when you're creating the track and you already had it set up like this, then when you're starting to create your mixdown, it will still sound amazing. So that is why it's really important to do it. And one more thing that I would like to do here is to go to the master. I would put our OTT plugin here as well. So let's go to more plugins. I will put on the OTT. And I always use the OTT on my master, but I want to be kind of careful with this one for the master. And then I also want to have a limiter on. So I will go to the Fruity limiter and just put it like that. And this will make the signal to just go to 0 dB and not above that, so we're not clipping our signal or anything like that. And you have to make sure that the Fruity limiter plugin is the last plugin in the plugin chain here for the master. And the limiter is, I think, the most important thing to have in your master, because that will limit the sound to 0 dB so it won't clip, even though you have volumes that are set like very, very loud here. So what I would do now, I will actually delete this pattern 1 here, and I would delete it like that. So now it's clean. I don't have anything on here. I can just start to create my track. So now I can just go to here, save as, and this is my best template. Save, and now I can just create my track by just going to my best template here. Alright guys, that is it for the project template section. Let's see you in the next lecture.